You want to change place?
Oh, yeah. That's good.
So this is what daf are we on? Yud Gimel Amud Beis. Yud Gimel Amud Beis, and we found out yesterday that even though we're learning for many daf already that Tzaras Erev is Asa, not only the Erev is Asa, also the Tzaras Erev, the co-wife of the Erev is also cannot do Yibum. But now we found out that that's only Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai says that you may. Okay, big machlokes. If Tzaras Erev is mutter, comes out as the Mishnah says that according to Beis Shammai they can do Yibum or Chalitza. According to Beis Hillel, there's no Yibum, no Chalitza. If they did Chalitza, according to Beis Shammai, it would cause the woman to become a Chalutza, which means she cannot marry a Kohen. And according to Beis Hillel, they did nothing. The Chalutza is nothing, so she could marry a Kohen. And also, if they did Yibum, according to Beis Shammai, it's kosher and wonderful. And according to Beis Hillel, it's Chayve Krisus. And she became Pasal Tekuna, the kid is a Mamzer. So a lot of ramifications in this machlokes. The Gemara starts, why my time the Beis Shammai, where does he get it from? Yesterday we did the first half of the Gemara, which was a drash of Achutza, and of course it's a drash. The Pashup Pshat means that she should not marry out, but the Gemara is dashing, an out woman should not marry a friend. Who's the out woman? She's out because she's not so close, she's not so related. There's a related woman, and she's the unrelated woman, she's the Tzaras Erev, and she should not marry Lezor, means that she has the Chiv of Yibum, and they still darshan it for something else. We said they darshan it for an Arusa. Somebody also agrees that Arusa is also, that means the first marriage, the husband who died, so he was only ma'aris her and then happened to sue, and still if he dies, so the wife has to do Yibum, and that's agreed upon. Just Beis Hillel has Beis Shammai has a different twist, chutza, and Beis Hillel doesn't know that. We're up to the second terrace now. The question is why does Beis Shammai hold that as mutter? Why is Tzaras Erev mutter? So a little diagram. There's only one diagram for today, or two diagrams with the same subject over here, and I think it'll go smoothly.
I didn't speak to you about how to get it together.
I didn't speak to him. Maybe he knows it. Okay. So here's the case. The Gemara is going to say the concept called Ein Isser Chalal Isser. That means if something was already an Isser, took effect, so a second Isser doesn't come on at all. So Ein Isser Chalal Isser. We'll see the words in the Gemara in a second. You can look at the Gemara if you have. Ein Isser Chalal Isser. One Isser does not take effect onto another Isser. So here's a story. Two brothers marry two sisters. And there's also a co-wife. There's the same setup as we have already, the template. This is the regular case, right? Two brothers marry two sisters. This brother had another wife. He died. They fall to Yibum. They happen to be related. Now, what's the relationship over here? Because there's also the relationship is going to be that she's also a wife's sister. Let's say, for instance, there's a brother's wife, fine, but it's also a wife's sister. That's it. What's one of the cases of that's the main point we learned out from. That was where the Litzror was. That's where he made the drasha that he can't marry her because she's an erva, because she's a wife's sister. The brother's wife, that the Torah says that a brother's wife, even though it's an erva, do yibum. But here is also another added problem that she's also an erva because she's a wife's sister. The Gemara says that the Chorah depends. Let's take one case that the dead brother, this brother married his wife before the live brother married the sister. 1 and 2. He married. This happened first, and then this happened. So when he married her, what was the relationship to them?
So he could have taken it as a yibum.
Yes, but nobody died yet. Nobody died. Right. Nobody died.
He's his sister-in-law.
This is before he died. So but what's sister-in-law mean? There's a brother's wife and there's a wife's sister.
His brother's wife.
His brother's wife.
Yes.
Then later on, the live brother, he married his sister. Now she also became a wife's sister.
Right.
So that's called Ein Isser Chalal Isser. Once the first Isser took effect, at this point, when he married, before this brother, before Shimon, this is Reuben, this is Shimon, before Shimon married his wife, he was related, the Isser that he had to his brother's wife was called the brother's wife.
Right.
Later on, when he marries the sister, and technically she became the wife's sister, that Isser doesn't take effect. She is the wife's sister, yes, she's the wife's sister, but there's no Isser. The Isser that the Torah says, do not marry your wife's sister, doesn't have place to fall on because she's already Isser because of one reason.
Right.
The second Isser doesn't take effect. If that's so, the Gemara is going to say that, why the Tzara is mutter? Why is the Tzara mutter? Because she's not the Tzara of an erva, because this woman didn't become Isser as being a wife's sister. she's a brother's wife. Fine, that's no problem of Yibum. But is she also a wife's sister? She's literally a wife's sister, but there's no Isra of a wife's sister. So she's not called an Erva as far as that goes, and therefore the Tzara is allowed to marry. It's a good time,
But how can you say she's able to marry because they're sisters? Oh,
No, that's one.
He's going to marry her.
Her.
He's the Tzara. She's the Tzara. You can't call her a Tzara's Erva because the Erva of being a wife's sister didn't take effect. The kasha would be that why can't he do Yibum then? Even to this one. That's a kasha that has to be asked. First that's the kasha, but we'll leave it. The kasha is that if you say that she doesn't become
because they still remain sisters physically.
Physically, it's not a difference. We don't know if there's an Isser. Is there Isser Achosisha? If you're saying that Isser Achosisha doesn't take effect, so then she's not Isser because of Achosisha. It's only the Isser of Eshesach, which the brother's wife, and that the Torah says is mutter for Yibum. We're saying the reason why the Torah's mutter is because she's not a wife's sister.
Right?
The
She's not a sister.
No. If the first one is not, I'm saying the first one is not a wife's sister, Issa, the Issa of a wife's sister, because that or else you'd be a Tzara Serva. So the same way the Gemara is saying that she's not a Tzara Serva means that she's not an Erva. If she's not an Erva, so then she also should be able to do Yibum. That's a kasha that has to be asked, and Tais has the kasha, and we'll leave it. But the Gemara says the reason why Beis Shammai says that he's allowed to marry the Tzara Serva is because Ein Issa Chalal Issa, and the Issa of the brother's wife preceded the Issa of the wife's sister. So the Issa of the wife's sister doesn't take effect. Ein Issa Chalal Issa. She just remains a brother's wife, and therefore there's no Issa standing in the way. So the Tzara Serva.
But if he married his wife first.
Oh, very nice. This is what you want, right?
Right. Okay. Right.
That's what the Gemara is going to say now. The Gemara says that's all very nice that the dead man married his wife before the live brother married his wife. But if it be the opposite case, Moshe is asking, what will be if the live brother, we call him live and dead, Al Shem Sofa, what happened at the end? Right? Of course, when they got married, they were alive. But the one there's Reuben and Shimon. Reuben eventually died, Shimon stayed alive. So if Shimon would have married his wife first, so this woman became a wife's sister. They were related as a Chosisha. She was a wife's sister. Then later on, when this brother, the dead brother, married her, then the contrary, she didn't become the brother's wife. So then she should be us. Then Sarah Sarah should be us because here there is the Isra of a Chosisha. That's the most kasha. That's all we have for today on the chart. That's all there is today, and the rest of it is not going to. So let's go on. Okay, we're on, what is it? Yud Gimel Amud Beis? Is that where we're holding again? Yud Gimel Amud
We're
Beis.
down to the two dots.
No, we're by Rava. The first one on the line is the Beis Shammai. Or on the screen, if you Rava Amatamai, the Beis Shammai, then it's a Chalalisa. The reason why it's mutter for the Tzara Serva to marry is because one Isra doesn't fall upon the second Isra, which the means she doesn't become a Chos Isha because she's already a Eshesach. And the Gemara says the two cases we spoke about, those are the two ones that are highlighted in blue. In the order of the two brothers marrying the two sisters, if the dead brother had originally married his wife before the live brother married his wife, then you're right. Then you're right that the woman who became usher because she's a brother's wife, then the Isra of being a wife's sister doesn't take effect. The Isra of being a wife's sister doesn't take effect on the Isra that already took place, that she's the brother's wife. So you're right. Over there, she wouldn't be Erva of a Chosisha because it's already taken. It's not vacant to be able to take effect. That's Moshe's kasha, that if the live brother, the surviving brother had married first, so the woman did become a Chosisha. A Chosisha was a wife's sister before it was a brother's wife. So the Gemara answers, you're right. It's also going to be mutter. You're right. Also because of Enes Echalolisa, but a different way. And here in this case, the Gemara is going to say, this is the second case, right? Yeah, second case. Here the Gemara is going to say, I wrote it over here, that this is a Chosisha and then a Eshesach. So it's only a Chosisha. So the Gemara says, you're right, that this woman, the relationship she has to the surviving brother is only a Chosisha, and she's not called the Eshesach, and therefore there's no mitzvah of Yibum. And the tzara is a tzara, this woman could get married because she's a tzara's erva that's nothing to do with Yibum. I mean, there's no issue to marry a tzara's erva. There's no issue to marry a tzara's erva. Instead, it's only just a tzara's erva when there's a brother's wife and there's no mitzvah of Yibum. So then it's considered marrying a Tzoras Erba who's a brother's wife. But here, if we say there is no Isser of a brother's wife, but Stama Tzoras Erba is not also to marry. Means if there wouldn't be a case of Yibum over here, a person is allowed to marry his wife's sister's Tzara. There's no such Isser. So that's why it's mutter, because this woman is not considered a Yibum woman because the Isser of Achos Isha took precedence, and she's Achos Isha. And then when the brother, but what happened first? She was married first. So she was a wife's sister. Then later on, when she gets married and she becomes a brother's wife, that doesn't take effect. Since it doesn't take effect, so then the mitzvah of Yibum doesn't take effect. It's a very hard Gemara because the mitzvah of Yibum has nothing to do with the Isser of a brother's wife. Is Yibum only the mitzvah of Yibum is only when there's the Isser of a brother's wife. Here's a case where there's a brother's wife. The mitzvah of Yibum has nothing to do with the Isser. But that's how the Gemara seems to look at it, that since there's no Isser of a brother's wife, so there's no mitzvah of Yibum. If there's no mitzvah of Yibum, so then you're allowed to marry the Tzara of an erva that's not a case of, not in the way of a brother's wife. So this woman is allowed to marry on both counts. On both counts, we're going to say because in a Sechal Alyssa.
And the other wife is going to give chalitza to the sister of his wife.
This one. This is an erva. She's an erva, and there's no.
He's going to do Yibum. When you say marry, it's going to be Yibum. The marriage is going to be a Yibum.
To the Tzara?
Yeah.
No. He says she's a.
When his
You're saying that it's going to be Yibum. The way I was saying that it wasn't. I was saying that it's mutter because there's no Yibum over here. It's a Tzara Seva Shalom Mocha Mitzvah. But you're pointing out that Beishamah doesn't just say he may marry her. Beishamah says he has to marry her because of Yibum, and that's against what I said. I didn't think of that.
And as long as it's Yibum, then of course the other one is there's no Chalitza because he did Yibum.
That's not the point. The point that Gemara is talking about is why Beishamah says that there's Yibum. So the way I'm explaining it is just that there's no Yibum she's not called Eishasach, and therefore there's no Yibum. So this one is going to be a Tzara Seva, like the Gemara says, Shlomo Makom Mitzvah. But then that doesn't make sense because Levi Yaakov is saying that Beishamah says not only it's mutter, Beishamah says there's Yibum. So I don't know that I have to figure that out. But that's the whole Gemara. To see it inside. The Gemara's kasha was in the second case that the live brother married first, and she became a wife's sister first. So then the second issue shouldn't take effect. Eishasach should not take effect. The answer is that you're right, that the Isser of Eishasach does not take effect, and therefore there's no Yibum. Since there's no Yibum, you're allowed to marry the Tzara of an erva if it's not a question of becoming getting into brother's wife shalom makom mitzvah. You're allowed to marry Stama at Tzara Serva. So that's the reason why you should be with it. Like Yaakov is asking, that's the reason why it's mutter. It's not a reason why it's a mitzvah to do Yibum. So I'm stuck on that. Hope to clarify. That's the end of the Gemara. The rest of the Gemara now, no chance for a couple of days, and hope that'll be easier.
What's the Chai mean in all these cases?
What? Chai means the surviving brother, the Miyabim. We'll call him the Miyabim. There's the Mace and there's the Yavam. Two brothers, one died, the other one is the potential Yavam. So we call him the Chai, the one who's still living. And Mace is the one who eventually died, and he's the one who caused the whole issue of Yibum. So the rest of the Mishnah said, just a cheshbon, calculating what's halacha. The point of Beishamah is Yibum, the point of Yisrael is not. So if the Mishnah said on top, that if they did chalitza, chalzu, so it says Beishamah says that she's possible not because she's a chalutza, because you're supposed to do Yibum, and if you do a Yibum chalitza, so if they did it, so then this woman becomes a chalitza. A chalitza is not allowed to marry a kohen. It still says it's kosher because there's no chalitza. They did the act of chalitza, but it's not really chalitza. The whole thing's a joke. They didn't do anything, so therefore she'd be allowed to marry a kohen. The most kasha, it goes without saying. Pshita. Chalzu Beishamai Postlin. Is that good? Chalzu Beishamai Postlin. Pshita. Of course, Beishamai says Postlin because there's a chalutza, but it still says kosher. What's the question? If it's not a chalitza, so then for sure she's kosher to marry a kohen. The more answers, Lafuke the Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri is coming to exclude, they say differently than Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, who says a third opinion. He wanted to make a kind of a compromise to make everybody happy. Means according to Beishamai, you have to do Yibum or Chalitza. According to Beishamai, according to Beis Hillel, there's no Yibum and no Chalitza. So he said, do Chalitza because nobody, to do Yibum, of course, you can't, because according to Beis Hillel, that's Chavi Krisis. You're marrying a woman who there's no, a brother's wife, that there's no mitzvah to do Yibum. But to do chalitza wouldn't hurt, doesn't hurt anybody. It's true that it makes a puzzle to a Kohen, but that's kedai. Make a takana that in order to be, if Beis Shammai holds you must do chalitza or yibum. Beis Hillel says you may not do yibum. The chalitza, it's nothing. Okay, so maybe we should be machmir mirabanan to say that you do chalitza in order to be also all the shittas. That Beis Hillel also should be choshesh, at least for Beis Shammai's opinion, to make mirabanan that you should do chalitza, and therefore Beis Shammai will be satisfied, Beis Hillel will be satisfied. Kamash b'lan that Beis Hillel machshir, and Beis Hillel says no, the chalitza is nothing. Even mirabanan, there's no reason to do chalitza, and if he did chalitza, it doesn't count. It's a nothing, and therefore she's still kosher to marry Kohen. It's good. It makes sense what I said now. Good. Next, this Yabum, Beis Hillel Poslim. If they did Yibum, Beis Shammai says he's supposed to do Yibum. Beis Hillel says that it's terrible. The Chayvi Krisus. He married a brother's wife without a mitzvah. So the woman is supposed to Kohanim because she was a Nibal Asula. She had relations to a Chayvi Krisus. She becomes puzzled to Kuna, and the children are Mamzerim. Also, the Mishnah doesn't say that, but it's also true. The Gemara says Hasul Amali. This is surely extra because, like we said, Pshita, make the cheshbon. If you know that if she married her and there's no mitzvah of Yibum, so it's Chayvi Krisos and she's puzzled. I did the Tana Cholzu, Tana Nami Nis Yabum. You're right. This part is already extra. We just want to say the first part. We want to say the case of Chalitza. So we added on the case of Yibum already also. Means the Mishnah says the case of Cholzu, and then it says the case of Nis Yabum. You're right. The second case is Mamish extra. There's no chiddush in that. We could have made the cheshbon ourselves. But the first part was a chiddush because you might have thought that Beis Hillel should agree that if that's a good thing to do chalitza, and if he did, she becomes puzzled to a Kohen. Because of that, we mentioned the second case also, but it's not no chiddush. And that's the end of the sugya. And now starts a long sugya, and that's the sugya called Losas Godedu. It's in the yellow of here. Losas Godedu. The pashup shot is Losas Godedu, but also single kar al meis, something like that. Lameis. Right. Pasuk says, "Banim atem l'Hashem olokechem." You are children to the son to Hashem. Sons to Hashem, and therefore those is go to do, and don't make a bald spot appearing out here on a dead person. The pasuk of the pasuk is like the Gemara is going to say, "Lo sasu chabura al meis." I'm sorry about all that. I didn't mean that. Lo sasu chabura al meis. That don't make a wound because the dead person died. Lo is go to do would mean like to make a cut, not to cut one's skin on grieving over a dead. And same way it says the pasuk at the end that also don't pull out here. That's the pasuk shot. But the Gemara is going to say Rash on this, like we're going to see lo sasu agudas. Don't make groups. Don't divide yourselves into groups. One aguda is good. Many agudas is not good. So that's going to be a subject comes into our Gemara. Tanam we start from left field back to Maseches Megillah. Megillah.
After the person is dead, to make
yes, but a person not in the dead person. The live person, the mourner is going to be grieving and he's going to cut his skin. He's going to pull out his hair. That's the Issa Deraisa. Those is go to do. Those who see Mukorcha Ben and Nichem Lamais. But that's the pashup shot. We're not going to be in the pashup shot today. We're going to be in the drash. Those is go to do. We're going to say don't make agudas. So we'll get to that in a second.
Was there a thing with Yosef telling his brothers? Was that also part of this or not? It's totally different thing.
You're talking about low.
When they go back.
I'll take Zuba Derech now. Nothing to do
with Tisco.
No. The first Mishnah of Megillah, as everybody knows, we just passed Purim. Megillah Nikreis b'achadasa b'shneimas b'shloshasa b'abasa b'chamishasa. There are all these days possible to read the Megillah: 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 of Adar. L'pachas v'layosa, not before the 11th, not after the 15th. And over there, the Mishnah continues. Starts. We know the Klalamar that the people that live in a walled city is the 15th. The people who live in the unwalled city is the 14th, and the 11, 12, and 13 is going to be for the villages that they come in. Anyway, on Mondays and Thursdays, so they made a leniency that they could read the Megillah on days before. And so it came out on the 14th, came out on Tuesday, so they'll read it on Monday. Came out on Wednesday, they'll read it on Monday, etc. Come out on Sunday, they'll read it on the previous Thursday. So you can get 11, 12, and 13. And the kasha was, Amalei Shlok Shab Yochanan, Ikri Kan, Los go to do, Los Sasu Gudas Agudas. Shlok had a problem on the Mishnah and Megillah, which the one Megillah does not ask. How come it's not a problem of Losas go to do? The pasuk says Losas go to do. That's the two words is the pasuk, and the rest of it is the drash, the explanation that don't make groups. So here you're going to have one group is going to read the Megillah on the 11th, one is going to read it on the 14th, one is going to read it on the 15th. How could you make even the 14 and 15 alone? That's you just had it. How could you have that? In some places they read on the 14th, and in Yerushalayim they read on the 15th. How could it be? That should be considered making groups, and you're not supposed to make different groups amongst Am Yisrael. So first the Gemara goes to explain, is that true? Is Losas go to mean that? Doesn't it mean the simple pshat not to make a wound on the grieving of a dead man? I Losas go to me by little gufe. Dam Rachman Losas chabur al meis. The pashup pshat that he shouldn't make a wound because of a dead man. What are you darshaning agudas? What happened to the pashup pshat? So he says no. There's some nuance in the pasuk that shows that there's more than just the issue of making a wound on the dead. It's also a drash of agudus. Why? Because there's a nuance in the pasuk. In Cain, it should have said lo sigodedu. The fact that would have been an easier way of saying it. The fact that it says lo sisgodedu, that's room for a drash also. So we look. My tisgo the dushmamina lach yudasa. We see that it's coming to tell you the new drasha that you shouldn't make different groups. But so Mar says, okay, it sounds like a nice drasha. Maybe it's only coming to tell you this halacha making groups. Maybe there is no such issa as making a wound. So the Mar says no. Okay, name it called lo sagodu or lo sagodu. My lo sisgodu shmamina. There's two drashas over here. There's the word could have been written in a different way. If it would have just meant either one, if it only would have meant a wound, then it should have said lo segodedu. If it would have only meant making groups, it should have said lo sagodu. How does it go in the beginning? It should have said lo segodedu or lo tisgodedu. Tisgodu. I put in tisgodu, maybe different gears, maybe. But why you have lo tisgodu? So there's room for two drushes over here, and therefore you learn both of them. We have both drushes. One is not to make a wound because of grieving over the mace, and the other one is not to make groups.
So Reish Lakish is still in.
Yes. I think that the Gemara was just explaining.
I don't understand what kind of groups. Religious groups. Oh, I mean separate from
factions.
Don't
make not separate from Am Yisrael. Am Yisrael is divided into different sectors. Don't make different groups amongst Am Yisrael, which nowadays we have so many of them, not supposed to be.
We already had 12 tribes.
That's not because you have families also. That's okay. There's families, tribes, relatives. That's not called making groups. You're not making divisions. Don't make divisions amongst Am Yisrael. And here you're making that David and Megillah on the 14th, David and Megillah on the 15th. The Gemara considers that you're making different groups amongst Am Yisrael. If anybody has a better word than groups, I'm happy to get a better word. That's the word. Okay. If everybody has art scroll, what does art scroll call it? It's also good. Okay. So that's the kasha. So I hope you want a kasha. Now we just clarified that the kasha is a good kasha. There is such a thing as losses go to do, not to make agudos, and how could they make the Megillah on different days? Amalei, so Rabbi Yochanan, instead of answering the question, he says he should have asked a better question. Ad kan lo shanisa makom shenagu lasas malacha be'arbe psachim ad chasos osin makom shenagu shlo lasas einosin. He did learn the Mishnah Psachim where it says that the issa to do malacha on every Pesach, it depends on a minhag makom. Some places do, some places don't. So that's also a kasha. Why didn't you ask over there? Why did you only ask in Megillah? You could have asked on Psachim also that over there, or maybe even it comes earlier, maybe. So you should have asked over there. That how could it be that some places that do malacha that don't do malacha on their Pesach, a minhag not to do malacha, and some places have no such minhag, and you can do malacha. Why is that not a kasha to you? So he's asking another kasha. This kasha also should have been closest go to do. Amalei, so Shlokim said, I asked a better kasha. Amin alacha no isuro, damar of Shem barab, Amar of Yochanan, the kaim is to me apur meila bezman yehem, zmanim harbi tiknu lam chachamim. I'm saying a better kasha. My kasha is from something which is an isser, means a mamash halacha. You must not. That it says in the Megillah that is bazman yehem, that they made a takana at zmanim harbi. The word zman yehem implies that there are many times to do the reading of the Megillah. And it says that one day is going to be the 14th, one is the 15th. They made different times. So the more is a drush also to say even 11, 12, and 13. So that's mamash halacha. You're telling me a case of psachim, it's only a minhag. On a minhag, I'm asking a better kasha. It could be the Gemara means that on minhag there's no. It could be the Gemara means to say on a minhag there is no issue of losses go to do, or the Gemara means even if there is a kasha, but on a better kasha, it's better to ask from halacha than to ask from a minhag. That to make agudas as far as minhagim goes is not as big a kasha as that the chazal mutaking to make different times. That's a mamash big kasha. But I'm with
so the fact that it says bisman hem,
right?
That's his kasha.
That's the source. No, that's the source that is halacha to make different times. To make,
and if it's then is that good for him? Or
no, that's why I'm asking a kasha because it's mamash halacha. They have different times.
After the Chachamim have done
right. And the kasha from psachim was also. You could say that's not a kasha. I'm saying two ways to learn the Gemara. Either the Gemara means that minhag wouldn't have been a kasha to me. If there's a minhag to malacha, that wouldn't have been a kasha. Or it means to say even if it would have been a kasha, but I asked a better kasha. That's a kasha that how they has mamash halacha that they must do this way, they must do this way. That's a bigger kasha than just a minhag. Of making factions.
Yeah. Yes, before it was it has article translates. It says you shall not form separate factions.
Factions. Okay, we use the word factions. Okay.
And then how can you have machlokas? Everything about Israel is about machlokas. Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai. They thinking differently.
That's going to be the most kasha coming up soon. But Beis Shammai is going to be a big kasha. If you have machlokes and then they come to an agreement, so then that's the idea to make a machlokes. You come to an agreement. Bisham Beisil is going to be the Gemara's kasha that there are two different houses of study that are going to be paskening differently, and they're going to have different laws. The Gemara's going to ask. That's also agudas. The Gemara's going to ask that also. I just would like to say, I think my own thing, that the Gemara is asking in halachic aspects, when is it considered agudas? But if you make different factions, strong factions, that each one says a wall between the other one, that's surely agudas. That you don't need the Gemara to explain. That's surely going to be considered making factions. That if they have such a thing in Am Yisrael, it should be abolished. So the Gemara is talking about, is there such an issue? If there's such an issue, losses go to do, how could you have? So the Gemara's first kasha, the Gemara said, is a strong kasha. But Shlok saying there's a strong kasha, that there's halacha. Minig also might be a kasha, but have been hugging in some places, yes, some places not. But Megillah is surely a kasha. That's how the Gemara seems to present it. The Gemara says, first the Gemara goes back to the Pesachim. He's saying it's only a minhag. That over there, there's an issue of Isra and Mutter over there. The way Rashi explains, the Gemara Pesachim says that there is the first Mandiyama over there, Pesachim, in the fourth parak. Taf Ketaka says that this is to do Malach on Pesach is dependent on a minhag. It's only a minhag. Some places do, some places don't. But then the Gemara says that there's another Mishnah, B'Chachamim Omrim, B'Yehuda, B'Golol, and he holds that it's like an Isra, Machlokes, if you're allowed to do Malach or not. And some places you're not allowed to do Malach, some places you are. And Beishamai says, Machlokes Beishamai V'Silal, and the places that say that you're not allowed to do Malach Minadin during the day, how about the previous night? Then the eve of the 14th, B'Dikas Chamas, which we started speaking about already in the halacha class. But the night of B'Dikas Chamas, are you allowed to do malacha? So Beishamai says that you're not allowed to, but still says you may. Only in the morning, that's that with the issue that you're not allowed to do malacha. But anyway, you see that some hold that it is also to do malacha on Erev Pesach. At night, there's a machlokes, and also in the daytime, the places over there, Yehuda and Golu, machlokes, if you're allowed to do malacha or not. So back to the question. It's a good question. And even though you didn't ask it, you asked by Megillah, how come you didn't ask over there? So Rabbi Yochanan didn't answer the question yet. He's just saying, how come he didn't ask a better question? We still didn't get to the answer, but we're just deciding, is there a kasha from Pesachim? So first he said that it's only a minhag. Now he says, no, that there's also an issue over there. And still, it doesn't bother you that there's different groups, different factions. Now Rabbi Yochanan answers, Amalei, Hasa, Shlakish answers.
Yeah,
the Shlakish answers that it's not difficult over there. Over there, I wouldn't ask. Hasa, Maroa, Omer, Malacha, Hudalesle. Over there, if you see some people doing work and some people not working, you don't see that there's factions, because some people have what to do, some people don't have what to do. Just because people are not working, it doesn't mean that they hold that it's also to do malacha. They're closed today, they're vacation, they're busy for Pesach, whatever. They're not. You don't see that there's a machlokes if you're allowed to do work or not. But over here, that some people are doing Megillah Dafka on the 14th, some are doing Dafka on the 15th. So you see, there's a machlokes, and that's we call agudas agudas. Kash is good.
Because you have if we have a mitzvah to read the Megillah, and some people aren't reading, you can't say, oh, they're just don't have.
And they're reading, and they're right. Why they're not reading? And they're reading it the next day, and they're not. Those people are not reading it. So then you see that there's
so real facts.
Right, and that's the most question. But Rabbi Yochanan says there's even still another kasha you should have asked. So Shlakish just explained why he didn't ask the kasha from Pesach, from it's a malach on Erev Pesach. But so far we didn't get an answer yet, and Rabbi Yochanan is still going to ask that he should have asked from different places also. And now we come to our Masechta. Our Mishnah says if
I'm sorry, what happened to the Hape Shama Matir?
That's what we're holding now. That there's a kasha. Rabbi Yochanan is asking, why didn't he ask from our Mishnah? He asked from Megillah. Why didn't he ask from the Mishnah of Beishamai Beisilo? Beishamai says that Soros are not allowed to marry. The Soros Erev is allowed to marry, and Beisilo says they're not allowed to. Why is that not a kasha? That you have in some places the Soros Erev is doing Yibum, in other places they're not, because Beishamai Beisilo is having a machlokes. Why does that not bother you? So we didn't get an answer yet. They're just finding out what the kashas are, and that's what Yochanan asking, that if you hold the closest go to is a problem, so you should ask him Beishamai Beisilo also. Or Shlokish, why did you ask from there? Shlokish answers, top line, Mi Savris, Asu, Beishamai Kidebrayim, Lo Asu Beishamai Kidebrayim. I'm not sure why the point that you think that Beishamai did the way they paskin, the way they didn't do. That even though they had a machlokes, but the Maisa, they had a machlokes in the Beis Medrash. But once they came out of the Beis Medrash, they also did like Beisilo. The Gemara is going to talk about why not. The Gemara is going to talk about in the parentheses down a couple of lines. The Gemara is going to talk about why did Beishamai not do what they hold. They're going to do Yibum, and Beisilo says it's Chayvi Krisis. Beisilo says you're not allowed to do Yibum. The Beis Shammai says you're allowed to do Yibum. So the Gemara thought that as a kasha. The Gemara answers at this point, Reish Lakish says they didn't do it, even though they said he's supposed to do like that. But the Maisa, they didn't do like themselves. They passed like Beis Hillel also. So in fact, in action, there was no machlokis happening. In the Beis Medrash was a machlokis, but when it came to Maisa, they didn't do the way they hold. Not because those is go to do. The Gemara is going to say another reason why they backed down and they didn't do what they held. We'll see soon. But the Maisa, there was no losses go to do over there because Beis Shammai didn't do it in practice. By the Megillah 14, 15, it says that's what you're supposed to do. Some people read it under 14, some people read it under 15. It's a serious kasha that you're making groups, you're making factions. But Beis Shammai Beis Hillel, they didn't have factions. They had machlokes in the Beis Medrash. But outside, when they came to do Yibum or not, Beis Shammai also said, don't do Yibum. Do like Beis Hillel. No Yibum, no Chalitza.
Even though they said posting min kahuna.
They say the Mishnah is all in the Beis Medrash, but that's in the Beis
But they
Medrash.
didn't say marry. Don't do
Don't do Yibum, don't do Chalitza either,
Don't
they say.
get to the point of being puzzled. They're just
Don't do like me. Don't do like I said. According to me, it should happen that they should do Yibum or Chalitza, but don't do like me. We do like Beis Hillel. Means when a woman is going to come to Beis Shammai to ask, what should I do? They'll also say, do like Beis Hillel. Don't do like we hold. We'll see soon why. But the Gemara says, no, there's a machlokes. What? No, Beis Shammai holds that they have to do it. They have to do Yibum. According to the Shita and the Beis Medrash, they said you have to do Yibum. But they said, the Maisa, don't do like us, do like Beis Hillel. We'll see in a minute why. Rabbi Yochanan says they did. They did and they did. Like they're stressing it. They did do it. Reish Lakish says that they didn't do, but they paskin.
asu.
Yeah, they did and they did. Like banging on the table. They did and they did. They did. It's just repeating it. That emphatically said that they did. So Reish Lakish holds that they didn't do it. Beis Shammai didn't do what they hold. They didn't paskin l'maisa. And Rabbi Yochanan says that they did. And therefore Rabbi Yochanan says if the kasha is a kasha, you should have asked it over there. So far, we didn't get to the terrace. We still don't know the answer to Los's go to do. We're just figuring out where's the kasha. And then the Gemara goes on to this point about Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. Very general. It's a shas. This is a shas question. Wherever it says Machlokes Beis Shammai Beis Hillel, there are many, many, many. So one opinion says that Beis Shammai never did Lamaisa what they hold. They just said this is what we would hold. But Lamaisa we're going to do like Beis Hillel. But the Machlokes the Rav Shmuel, the Machlokes of Yochanan Reish Lakish, if Beis Shammai Beis Hillel did what they hold, if Beis Shammai did what they hold, is a Machlokes also of Yochanan Reish Lakish, also Rav and Shmuel. The Rav Omer. Lo asu Beis Shammai k'divrayim, u'shmuel omer asu b'asu. Rav says that Beis Shammai did not practice l'maisa what they held was the right thing to do, and Shmuel says that they did. And then the Gemara goes into the subject for about how long is it going to be? 15 lines, something like that, to show the reason why Beis Shammai might not have done what they said in the Beis Medrash was the right halacha. Amos, when is this happening that Beis Shammai machlokes if they did or not? Somebody knows that there was a baskol that came, a heavenly voice that said Allah is like Beis Hillel. And the Gemara is assuming that before the baskol, there's no reason why Beis Shammai should have given in, submitted, is that the word? Submitted, that they should have submitted to Beis Hillel. And after the baskol, there's no reason why they should not have. If the baskol said Allah is like Beis Hillel, so everyone should do, Beis Shammai should say, okay, the baskol said Allah is like Beis Hillel. So when is the machlokes if they did like themselves or not? Why should anybody think Beis Shammai didn't do according to their opinion? There was no baskol yet, so why should they not do like they think? If it's after the heavenly voice came out that said Allah is like Beis Hillel, why does anybody say that Beis Shammai continued doing the way they hold? The baskol said Allah is like Beis Shammai, like Beis Hillel. So the Gemara says I could answer you both ways, and we'll come out to understanding why there's a machlokes if Beis Shammai did the way they hold. If you want, I could answer that machlokes is before the heavenly voice came out. If you want, I could answer that it's talking after the baskol. So now we'll show both choices. If you want to, I can explain that it's talking about before the baskol, and there's still a reason why Beis Shammai might not have done the way they hold. There was no baskol, and still they're not going to do the way they hold. They're going to submit to Beis Hillel. Why is that? You're going to Beis Hillel, Ruba. Beis Hillel was the rule. They had a bigger Beis Medrash. The members of Beis Hillel were more than the members of Beis Shammai, and that's the reason why there's room for machlokes. The reason why some will say the Beis Shammai didn't do like their own opinion because they voted their opinion, but they were a minority, so they also gave in and did like Beis Hillel, and they didn't pass them like themselves. They passed like the rule. Like anytime that you have a rove and a miyut, you have a bezdin that have machlokes. So the miyut, the minority, has to submit to the rove. So Beis Shammai said their opinion, but the Ma'aseh rove, Beis Hillel was majority, so they did like Beis Hillel. Because the reason why Beis Shammai might still have continued doing like themselves even though Beis Hillel was the majority, we're not arguing Beis Shammai Beis Hillel was the majority, but there still might be a reason why Beis Shammai Beis Hillel says the halacha is like us anyway. Why? Because Beis Shammai were mechadedi tvei. That means they were sharper, they were smarter. Beis Shammai was smarter, Beis Hillel was majority, and everybody agrees. It wasn't a machlokas. Everybody agrees Beis Hillel was the majority. Everybody agrees Beis Shammai was smarter. Do you go with the rove if the minority is smarter than the majority? Machlokas. So it might be that Beis Shammai said that we don't pass like you because we're smarter. Beis Hillel says, but we're the rove. So that might have been a machlokas, and that will be a reason why Beis Shammai. Some will say that Beis Shammai did not do like the rove because they held that the halacha is like the machadadi, the ones that are smarter. That's one choice. We'll sum it up soon. He could say the machlokas is talking about after the heavenly voice came out. The reason why Beis Shammai might have submitted to Beis Hillel is because the Baskal said the halacha is like Beis Hillel, so they gave in. There's an opinion of Yeshua that says that we don't pay attention to the Baskal. That's the famous of Yeshua. They're not rules like that. Yeshua says that mashgichim b'Baskal, lo b'shamayim, and therefore Beis Shammai says we don't pass like Beis Hillel, even though the Baskal said so. So just to sum all that up, there's a machlokas Beis Shammai if Beis Shammai did the way they hold. There are two reasons the Gemara possibly says why they might not have done the way they hold, either because Beis Hillel was the rove, or because the Baskal came, that looks like Beis Hillel. There's a tzad to say that both of these cases, there's a tzad to say that Beis Shammai still did do the way they hold, either because they were machadadi, and therefore they were smarter, and even though they're a minority, they still don't have to submit to the majority, or even though there's a Baskal, they don't have to listen to the Baskal. So it comes out as machlokas amaram, Rav and Shmuel, Ruch and Bashlakish, if Beis Shammai did the way they hold or not. If they didn't do the way they hold, there's no kasha losses go to do because they didn't do it. They didn't. In the Beis Medrash they argued when they came out, they all agreed. But according to the Madam that says they did do according to their opinion, so the kasha arises, how could it be agudas? That's the more kasha now. The more now continues. So the kasha is only if you hold that they did. But if they did, we need an answer. Madam asu, Kamina goes go to do los agudas. Back to the original kasha. The original kasha was about Megillah. And the Gemara discussed why not ask another kasha. We spoke about the minhag of the issur of not doing malacha. Maybe over there it's not losses go to do because people who see they don't see machlokas. Some people are working, some people are not. We don't have to see agudas. And then the Gemara was saying about Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel about yibum doing a yibum to tzoros is that machlokas happening that there's agudas. So those who say that Beis Shammai did not practice what they preached because they're not supposed to, whatever reason, either because they're a miyot or because there was a baskal, so then there's no kasha. They didn't make agudas. But if they did, so the kasha is going to be here also, agudas. And the kasha of Megillah is still standing in the beginning. It might have been a better kasha, but another kasha. But the kasha of Megillah still was not answered. How come by Megillah you're allowed to make agudas to make 14 and 15, 11, 12, 13? Why is it not called agudas? So we have two kashas on that one.
Okay, existentially, I think is what I'm thinking. If you have somebody's arguing with somebody in terms of what the halacha is, who's supposed to give in so that you don't make agudos?
Very nice. If we're going to say that they're not supposed to do agudos,
Shammai felt that they were right.
Right, and they still have the right. So why should everybody
do what, like I said, I was a smarter one, or I don't listen to a bus.
Right. So I think that that kasha is a good kasha that has to be addressed. I don't know if we're going to be able to, but if you're going to say that you're not allowed agudas, who's supposed to give in? You say this is machlokas, and both of them have equal authorization to have an opinion. And then he said we can't have this going on, that there's going to be a machlokas. Okay, so we sit around the table, and we sit around the table, and we sit around the table, and who's supposed to give in? Why should anybody give in? How can I give in? I hope that this is the right halacha. So I don't know the answer to that question. How is Los's going to do? It could answer the kasha on Megillah. Don't make such a takara to make 14 and 15. Don't make all these takaras. Yeah, but the case where there's a machlokes and each one is supposed to do what he's supposed to do. So why could he say Los's going to do? So now what? Nice kasha.
The Chazal himself says that the
Gemara is asking kasha. Los's going to do. The Gemara is asking kasha.
We're not questioning that there's a big tool of one side here.
No one said that. Would you quote it now? Because everyone needs to change their mind. What does it have to do with it?
Go back to the story of Yeshua. Listen to the Nasi.
Rabbi Elias.
Well, I'm not sure what you're going to do. The Shem Shemaim, but there's a problem even after the Shem Shemaim that there's going to be agudos. So that's the Gemara's problem. The Gemara's not saying they're not the Shem Shemaim.
There have to be machlokes. There will always be machlokes.
The Gemara's asking, how could there be a machlokes? That's the Gemara's question. The Los's go to do that they can argue the Mismedrash is fine, but when they come out, how could they be machlokes? There's going to be Los's go to do.
These garbage because we mevater on our dots.
Who's mevater on das? Who's mevater?
We saw by Rabbi Yeshua, who kept Yom
That was a
Yom Kippur.
that was a reason, because he was the Nasi and he made Kiddush HaChodesh. That has nothing to do with this. There's a thing about Kiddush HaChodesh that they afilu mazidim, afilu shogim. But here you have machlokes, and now we're saying we can't have this happen. We can't have this going on. So now what? Let's say Ashkenazim and Sephardim, same idea. They came to Eretz Yisrael, Ashkenazim and Sephardim. Let's say theoretically, come out, it's not going to be a problem. Let's say it'll be a problem. So Losses go, we can't have this. We can't have this going on. That there's going to be two monogam in Eretz Yisrael. Ashkenazim and Sephardim.
That's what Rabbi Vadi said.
So why should the Ashkenazim give in? Let the Sephardim come in. Let the Sephardim give in.
No,
He said because they were first. But let's say it wouldn't be first. Let's say there's no issue of being first. So who's supposed to give in? Bisham still no one was first. They have machlokes, and he's saying this can't be. It can't be a machlokes. We can't have two opinions out in the street. So the Yaakov was asking, so what do you do? So now what? Who should give in? No one should give in. So I don't know the answer to the question. You agree to the question?
Yes, but there is answers in the Chazal tells you that you have to give in.
Who should give in?
Who should give in?
One of the parties.
Who?
Okay, so he said that we're a minority.
No. That's over. There's no not going now. There's a reason why Bishami says that we're not supposed to give in. There's no giving in. Not mitzvah is going to do. Mitzvah, the fact that we're a miyut, that doesn't make anything, and the fact that it's a baskal also nothing. So now you have two proper authoritative opinions that are arguing, and we say we can't have machlokes. So everyone's looking at each other. No, give in. So that's a very nice question. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is.
No, but here it's not shayach to mivater, it's halacha.
So it's a question. You make the strong.
I mean, if it's machlokes stam, so each one could say
you can't be about there. If you hold this halacha, so why should I be about? How am I not be about? So that's a question that needs an answer. I don't know what the answer is. But the Gemara is asking Kasha that by Megillah is a problem, and also by we took care of that already.
No, this is page.
We're talking about Bisham Beisil by Yibum. Yibum by Tzora, that's the question. We're talking about this question that how could it be there's machlokes if you do Yibum and even Asu Kedivrim, that they actually practice what they preached and they said you do Yibum and they said you don't do Yibum. That's a Kasha. Amar Abaye. Yes?
You say and bracha el shalom. They have to make shalom.
I'm not sure what you mean.
They have to make shalom, and they have to, and it was.
They have to uphold their opinion of the halacha.
I don't think that you're addressing the point.
Go to divorce court, see the husband and wife, and each one thinks, I'm right, I'm not giving it, and that's
no, but if I'm saying that's different. Over there, talking about someone could give in, he could be mavate, he could. Here, you're not allowed to because he owes this to halacha. So why should I give in? How could I give in? But the question he's saying, the Tzvi Shalom was not addressing the question we're asking. Amar Abaye, Kia Mira Losses go to the go and stay about the din of Be'erachas. Allah Ram Kibbe Rebbe Shama, Allah Ram Kibbe Rebbe Sela. Avo stay but the din and bestay Yovas Las Lanba. Abaye says it's only a problem if it's in the same city. But if it's in two cities, it's not a problem. As if to say Besham Beisila were in two different cities. One was Besham, one was Beisila. It's not a problem because you don't see the machlokas. You don't see that there's two factions. You go to the city, you see they do one way. You go to another city, you see they do another way, but you don't see factions. As long as Babai says, as long as we're in two different cities. Stay Batidin and Be'erachas, that's a problem. If you have one city and there are two Batidin, one person is one way, a Beshamai Bezdin and a Besil Bezdin, that's a problem because you see a machlokas, you see two factions. But if you're in two different cities, there's no problem with factions. You don't see the division.
Maybe that's the opinion that Chutz La'arich comes to live in Israel. He comes to Israel for
let's try to hold on to the facts. Amalei Rava didn't accept this answer. That's not good. This is considered one city. Why does it mean that it's one city? Either because they lived in one city. There wasn't such a thing, a city of Beishamai, a city of Beisil. They were in the same city. And that doesn't answer the kasha because they are in the same city. Or maybe the pshat is that Beisham Beisil, even though it's two different cities, maybe it's considered like one city because it's Am Yisrael was what was that?
Their whole group was for the cloud.
And so as Am Yisrael together, we know that we look at it as one big city, even if it might be okay. Whatever the Gemara means, there was a little bit mashma that it wasn't actually one city, but you could learn maybe that the Gemara means to say that they are in the same city. They were in two different cities, Bisham Beisila. So therefore, Rava says it's not true what you're saying. Elam Rava Kiyamin Los go to do kon bezdin be'erachas. Flag more in Kedivah Bisham, flag more in Kedivah Beisila. Avol stay but the din be'erachas less lanba. More lenient than Abaye. Abaye said that you're not allowed to have two Batidinim in the same city. Rava says you're even allowed to have that also. You can even have two Batidinim in the same city. You just can't have one Bezdin that there's a split within the Bezdin. That some say one way, some say the other way. And therefore, Bisham Beisila it was two different Batidinim. And if you have one Bezdin, they're not supposed to be splitting that some say one way, some say the other way. That's the end of the Gemara. more or less.
Well,
The Gemara is asking more conscious to what that's saying.
That you're a fast lace like that.
No problem. If you have two Batei Dinim, even though they're in the same city, it's no problem. Let's not, but we don't care about it. That's not a problem. The problem is only one Bezdin that is split within.
Maureen did different.
Plug means half. Plug
Yeah,
more,
I see.
Chetzi more in Kedivah Besham, plug more in Kedivah, that's a problem. But if you have two Batei Dinim, it's not a problem. So Besham
All
Besham.
the Sephardi Medin and the Ashkenazim, the Hasidim, they do their own thing. Nobody's bothering each other. They can do what they do.
Right, it's not considered.
And that's
Losis goes to do. What does Losis go to do? Only if it's going to be within the same group, that they're going to make two factions within the same group. The Gemara has kashas on this, and the two kashas, I think. Toshma. Bimkomo shel Rabbi Eliezer, of course, it makes him lasas p'chomim b'Shabbos, lasas baza. Rabbi Eliezer hold that machshir mila docha Shabbos, that not only the bris milah is docha Shabbos, but on the 8th day, of course, but even if they have to do preparations on Shabbos, like they didn't have a knife. So how are you going to make the knife? You have to make the knife. And they even don't have the metal ready to sharpen. They have all that. They have to cut down wood in order to make coals, in order to make the metal, in order to melt the metal. You're allowed to do all of that. Whatever you need, even 10 preparations you need in order to do bris milah, you're only allowed to do it. And the Gemara is going to say soon that's only Rabbi Eliezer. We don't hold like that. This is Rabbi Eliezer. This is another case of a das yachid, that there was a minhag of a das yachid. That was a verse that he held that there's no issa of eating milk and meat if it's meat, if it's chicken, if it's going to be
Chicken
poultry.
is not meat.
Right, only animals, only cattle, flock. But if it would be basar oaf, you might eat chicken together with milk. Chicken burger, chicken with cheese, chicken and cheese. Well, we all know those who argue say that it's asa. But he held that it's mutter. And what does the Gemara want to say with all this? That only in those places they had these hatayim, other places didn't. Top the first white line, the first case, only in his place. But Haggid says you're not allowed to do machshir milah on Shabbos. Only the bris milah itself is dochas Shabbos. The Tanya, Klal Lam Rabbi Akiva, Kam Melacha Shev Shel Asos Amerev Shabbos Ein Dochas HaShabbos. Then any melacha that you could have done before Shabbos is not doch. Only the bris milah itself, which is impossible to do on the 7th day, that you're allowed to do on Shabbos. But any preparation you could have done is not dochas Shabbos. So the kasha comes back. What do you see the kasha? That you have two different places doing two different halachos. So that's a kasha. It's not a kasha. Everyone should jump up. It's not a kasha. We just finished saying that two different places is not a problem. So what's the Gemara want? The Gemara says, what kind of kasha is this? We just said that different places is okay. It's not in the same place. So what's the problem? No kasha. So what did the Gemara think? Why did the Gemara think it was a kasha? But the one who asked, the one who called on, the one who spoke up, what did he think? Why did he think it's a kasha? You might have thought, I don't know as far as exactly, that since Shabbos is so severe, so you might think that even two places also will be considered one place. And we should be machmer that even in two places, we shouldn't allow such a machlokes that one is going to be mechal Shabbos for bris milah, one is not. So you would have thought, it means the second kasha about eating milk and meat, maybe that the Gemara didn't ask from, only from the case of doing malacha on Shabbos, that the Gemara thought we should be machmer even in two places. No, two places is good, even such a big machlokes also. As long as it's two places, it's not a problem about goodness and goodness.
Makomas Shani, we would think that when it comes to like eating a cheeseburger made out of oaf in one place is not a problem.
Right, because that's Makomas
But Shabbos
is more
considered like one
place, whatever that means.
You want.
Right, whatever that means, we think that Shabbos would be so chomor that you should consider all the places as one. Maybe it has maybe I don't know. As far as example. Machlokes, if you're allowed to be mechal Shabbos for the preparations of the bris milah. That's machlokes. Rabbi Eliezer says yes, it is. Rabbi Akiva says no, it's chayiv skila to do such a thing. Okay.
With that same that we can still say our kasha, our question kicks in for that.
What's the question? You're going on what the question was.
Yeah. How could he say that you do the preparations and he says
says not. Even two different places. The Gemara says
different places.
the Gemara says two different places is good. That's the Gemara's answer. The Gemara just thought that it was going to be a kasha, but the Gemara says no. The answer covers that also. That two different places not even have a very extreme focus. Even Kamash Malan that even in
two with Shabbos.
It's Shabbos. If it's two places, it's okay.
Yeah.
So we're holding on to the teretz still that two places is okay. Ba'aya said that two cities are okay. One city is not good. Rabbi says even one city is okay as long as it's two batei din.
Who says
Rabbi. The Gemara continues with another kasha. We're now on the 4th wide line. Tashma Rabbi Avohu ki yiklal asved Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Rabbi Mataltal Shraga. The chiyikla asher Rabbi Yochanan lo b'tal teshmaga. A shmaga is a nair, and a nair that a lamp that extinguished is a muktzah or not? Are you allowed to move it on Shabbos? So
that went out?
yeah, it went out, right? It went out.
Okay, why isn't, it doesn't mean that he moved it well.
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
if everyone would agree while it's burning, you're not allowed to.
Yeah,
But the Gemara is talking about after it went out. So the machlok is about this, if you're allowed to move it or not. And it says that the Rabbi ben Levi depends where he went. When he went to the city of Rabbi ben Levi, he would move it. When he came to the city of Rabbi Yochanan, he did not.
You're going to the pasuk of that place.
Right, but the Gemara is asking, but then we fell off of that. That Shabbos also, even Shabbos, two different places is okay. But the Gemara is not asking that there are two places. The Gemara is not asking how could you have two places, Rabbi ben Levi and Rabbi Yochanan. That's not a kasha. We said two places is okay. But the Gemara is asking that Rabbi Vo, he goes here and he goes there. So it combines within him. It's like one place. The fact that one person, when he goes here, he does like that. When he goes there, he does like that. He's the one who's agudas. He's paskening in this place. This is the halacha. And this is the halacha. Not that he's a posek. He's relying on the rov of the city. But if that's called agudas, if you have two cities that don't have a connection to each other, so they do like that. They do like that. We don't see any kind of agudas. But if it's one,
not allowed to do that. Not allowed to do that because he's got to follow the chumrah of each place.
one place they're not allowed to, one place that they are allowed to do.
Right.
In one place he carried it, one place he didn't carry it. The Gemara is asking that not about the Issa, about minhag. If you get the chiyuv, well, that's what losses go to do. There's a losses go to do over here. Then how could it be agudas? Agudas, the Gemara says is okay when there's two places. But if it's one person that when he goes here he does like this, when he goes there he goes like that, it's like one city. The Gemara is considering it like one city. The fact that it's the same person who's going to both cities instead of moving, it's like you move the cities together. The fact that one person, the same eyes, he goes here, he does like that, he goes there, he goes like that. So that's considered the same place, and you have losses go to them. That's the most kasha.
how did you read that sentence? Hi, my kasha, kusha.
I think I said it before I read the words.
Okay.
The Gemara says, "Why my question? What's the question? We just said that you have two places. Didn't we already say that two places are okay? So what are you asking? So the Gemara answers because of Avo. This is what we meant to say. How did he do here like this and here like this? So I'm explaining the Gemara means to say, not a kashan of Avo. How did he do that? Halachically, it'll be okay. He doesn't have an opinion, so he goes according to the Moradas. Okay, back on again. The Gemara held in the kasha that Rabbi did not have his own opinion, and he's just doing according to the Rav, but they're two different places. But since he's doing in both places, here yes and here not, so that's like Los's go to do in the same place. The Gemara answers, Rabbi had his own opinion. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi sphere, he has his own opinion. He really holds like Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, not because he's the Rav, because that's what I hold like. And he's allowed to, and he's allowed to really move it in all places. He's allowed to move it. It isn't that Allah is changing. He has mutter, it's asa. I hold that it's mutter, and it's mutter in all places. The reason why he didn't move it, muksa, this that that Rabbi Yochanan holds his muksa in this place, because he was the Rav over there, so he didn't want to do against the Rav. But he has his own opinion, and he is really allowed to do it. The reason why he didn't do it is quoted Rabbi Yochanan, and that's not called a goodness. It isn't that the Allah is changing. The Allah is that it's mutter also. But Mishum Kvod, I'm not going to move it. The Marsa Kasha V'Ika Shama, what happened to the Shamash? Means he had an attendant, he had an aide, he had somebody who was coming along with him, and the Gemara seems to ask, well, say Taisus Shama says the pshat is that he's going to think you're allowed to do agudos. He doesn't know that the point is that the Baha holds that it's mutter just being machmir l'koda de Rabbi Yochanan. He thought that here's mutter, here's asa. So that's going to make a mixture. He's going to think you're allowed to make agudos. The Gemara answers the model Shama. Rabbi Avo, he told the Shamash. Rabbi told the Shamash that really it's mutter, but by Rabbi Yochanan we're not going to carry because kvodo. But not that the halacha changes. It isn't that here it's mutter and here it's us.
Can you read the text, please?
Where are you holding?
Ikesh
Shama is the Shamash. If the Shamash is going along with Rabbi Bo, and here he's carrying, here he's not carrying. And he's going to
get the wrong impression.
Right, he's going to think that you're allowed to make agudos. And the answer is, the more the Leila Shama, he informs the Shamash. He tells the Shamash really it's mutter. Even though we're not going to carry Rabbi Yochanan, that's only because kvodo, but not that it become also over there. We hold that it's mutter. The Gemara is really over. The Gemara losses go to do is asa. A big period over here. I should really make a big period over here.
For the Tashma.
Right.
So this is like the siyum of the Lord he's quoted. This is
As far as I remember.
okay.
What did we come up with?
We came out that it's only also if it's in the same bezdin. Rabbi says it's only also in the same. Rabbi says it's only also in the same city. Rabbi says it's even mutter in the same city as long as it's not the same bezdin. As long as it's not the same bezdin, then they're allowed to have two. But
I read it a long time ago because it's two different cities.
So that is not such a long time ago. That's what the answer was.
No, something on the 11th. It's the same city as they're doing on the 4th.
So that's Taisa's kasha. Taisa is going to ask that the people who come into the city, the 11, 12, 13 people are coming into the city, so it's going to be in the same place. So Taisa has the kasha. We can just notice the kasha over here. How does the answer Megillah?
It's two different tekufas. There's a different din on the days.
No, it's two different people in the same place that they're reading and that not reading. You're talking about here is from Megillah. The village people came into the big city people didn't read, the villagers read. So in the same city, you have some people reading, some people not reading. So
I'm sorry, which one?
Taisa was Kiyamrina.
The truth is in practical reason, because they go back to the original reasons is they had to take care of the needs.
The Gemara is asking Losses go to do. That's the kasha. Losses go to do. Very nice reasons, but there's still Losses go to do. So the Gemara is addressing the kasha, and Taisa asked how did the Gemara answer the kasha. So we'll leave Taisa.
Okay.
So now, really, we finished this sugya of Losses go to do. The kasha was how could you have two different opinions practicing? So we said just to come out. Maybe minhagim was not a problem. That the Gemara we didn't know how to read the Gemara. Maybe minhagim was not a problem. If it's just a minhag, but halacha says yes a problem. And we said Megillah l'chor is a kasha, and we said doing halacha and Pesach is not a problem, even if it's halacha, because it's not noticeable that they're doing a machlokas because some people don't have a lot of work to do. So that wouldn't have shown anything. But and also Beishamai, the Gemara said also Beishamai might not have done in practice what they hold, also wouldn't have been a kasha. But Megillah is a kasha, and also Beishamai, if they did practice what they hold, so then there's a kasha. And the Gemara said the answer is going to be, according to Abaye, as long as it's not in the same city. According to Rabbi, bigger leniency, even if it's in the same city, as long as it's not the same bezdin. If you have two batei dinim, they're allowed to have two different opinions and practice two different opinions. But if it's in the same bezdin, that's what the problem is. Finish the sugya. There's probably a lot of ramifications to the sugya. And I think, I'm not sure, but I think that for sure, to make factions for no reasons, there's no batei dinim, it's just factions without any batei dinim. That's probably the shorish of that point is that there shouldn't be different factions amongst Am Yisrael. If it's just minhagim and culture, that's not a problem. But if it's going to be two machanot, two camps, and each one is saying a wall between the two camps, so that is very serious.
Because of the two toughs, we can do both. We can learn
right. Two toughs and two dollars, something like that.
And $2.
Tis go to do.
Tis go to do.
So we're not eating rice, right?
Maybe
We should eat that.
everyone should eat rice.
Right?
Maybe everyone.
But we know, that's the point.
But it's good. But the Gemara says it's called shtei batei dinim. It's called shtei batei dinim. So it's okay. So it's okay. So it's okay. So shtei batei dinim beyachas is
Even though
okay.
they're next door, they're eating rice. And
Shtei batei dinim. Shtei batei dinim.
Maybe you should make color war.
And neighbors eating rice.
Why should you make a war? Why make a war?
Eating rice.
The children are all eating.
Yeah.
My children are eating
All
rice.
his children is eating.
Yes. My kids are
Okay.
rice.
The rest of the Gemara now, it goes on for a couple of pages, and very fascinating things are going to come up. The subject is not going to be now anymore about those who go to do. The subject is going to be about Beishamai. Asu kedibrim, Allah asu kedibrim. It came up at the top of the page. Did Beishamai actually practice what they said, what they held, or they did not? So we had a machlokas before. B'yochanan Rishlakish, Rav and Shmuel. Now the Gemara is going to go on. How do you say a string of proofs like 11 proofs? The Gemara is going to talk about 11 different cases. B'Sham B'Yisrael and try to prove if B'Shamai did what they actually held or not. Tashma. So this is like a new sugi, really like two dots, a big parentheses for a couple of pages. It goes on till I think Tezayin and all. So it goes on. Tashma. The Tashma here is not like Tashma before. We had two Tashmas. The two previous Tashmas was a question. Well, over time already? How could that be?
Not more.
This guy's waiting.
Because that's to come on and say, okay, 1 second. Look, I'm always glad I didn't realize that it's taking so long.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Okay. We need somebody to tell us we're holding on the time, to continue. Do we want to continue? Is that what we want? Rav Lagamsky, welcome back. Welcome back, Rav Lagamsky.
Yeah, tell me about the halacha.
So you're coming on for Hilchos Pesach, probably. So do we have permission to continue a little Gemara, or should we just fall further behind? Anyway, we're a couple of pages behind.
Alechem Sholem. Nobody told me it was Hilchos Pesach till Ronnie told me this morning, so I feel left out.
We just started. You didn't miss anything you don't know. But shall we stop or shall we continue a little bit? What does everybody say?
Well, we would hold the yes, but not everybody's holding the I would like to go on.
A little bit more because we're pulling out very much blind, so a little bit more to.
Consider the watch 10 minutes slow.
Okay, I don't know how long this is. We're trying to make it not more than till 10 after. Okay, so the Gemara says, Tashma. That's our Mishnah that says even though the machlok is going on, but the intermarried, B'Sham still had no problem with intermarrying, even though they had different opinions. So why did they not hold back from intermarrying? If a Shammai does held in theory like that, but in practice they didn't do what they hold, so fine, everyone's doing the same thing. So then no reason not to intermarry. Everybody's doing this, everyone's kosher according to everybody. But if a Shammai actually practice what they hold, so then it's big problems. How come they didn't hold back from intermarrying? What does that mean? There's no problem for Beis Shammai to marry into Beis Hillel, because what's the worst thing that happened according to Beis Shammai? That Beis Shammai would say you should have done Yibam or Chalitza, and you didn't. There might have been Tzara Serva that according to Beis Shammai should have done Yibam or Chalitza, and they didn't. So the children, the first generation, they can find out, with the Yibam of Barer and the woman, they can find out what their history is. But in the future generations, the worst is not going to be Mamzerim, because the worst they're going to be is the children of Yevamos L'Shuk. That she's not supposed to marry out, but the children are not going to become Mamzerim because of that. So okay, the children are kosher, so you can marry into Beis Shammai, can marry into Beis Hillel without a chash of any Mamzeris. Elo Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai, Amai Lo Nimnu. If Beis Shammai was practicing what they held, how come Beis Hillel was allowed to marry into them? There might have been Mamzerim going on over there, because according to Beis Hillel, a Tzara Serva is not allowed to do Yibam. According to Beis Shammai, they're supposed to. They may Chalitza or Yibam, and if they did, it's Chayvi Krisis. She's marrying her brother's wife, no mitzvah of Yibam, and the kids are going to be Mamzerim. B'nei Chayvi Krisis, Mamzerim. So how could they marry him without Achshash? It might be Mamzerim. Maybe we'll say Beis Hillel is not a mamzer only if it's more serious than Chayvi Krisis. Only if the union would have been a union that would have been a death penalty of earthly bezdin, capital punishment. That Chayv Krisis is not enough to make a mamzer. The union of Chayv Krisis to marry a brother's wife, even though it's not a mitzvah, is Chayv Krisis, but the kid is not a mamzer. It's only mamzer if it would have been a result of a Chayv Skila, Chenek, something like that. But just to marry Chayv Krisis, even though it's terrible of it, the children, so that's why a lot of marrying, because there's no mamzer going on around. But it's not true, because Beis Hillel does hold that Chayv Krisis. That's how we pass. We pass the Chayv Krisis, the kid is a mamzer. So okay, the whatever the Gemara is talking about over there, Gemara in Kedushin says on the side that it says over there, Beis Shammai both hold that an erba from Chayvi Krisis is a mamzer. So back to the kasha, how could Beis Hillel marry into Beis Shammai? They might have mamzerim over there. It must be that they didn't actually practice what they held. That even though they held they should do yibum, they didn't do it. The Gemara says no, it's not a proof. Lo lam asu. They did do. Beis Shammai married Tzara Serva, they did Yibam, and according to Beis Hillel, it's a mamzer. and they shouldn't be allowed to marry in. The answer is the Modi Lahu Uparshi, that they would inform them when you want to marry somebody from Beishamai. Beishamai would say, you know, that this family is already 5 generations ago. There was a Tzara Zerva, and we kept records that this kid, even according to us, is kosher, but according to you, it's a mamzer, don't marry into this family.
Parshi means they
And they
separate.
separate, right? They stayed away, If they would say, if they wanted to marry a woman or a child that might be a mamzer from this family,
They kept the
they kept
yichud.
the yichos, and they said, according to Beisil, there's a mamzer.
Uh-huh.
So only marry in Beishamai. So that takes away the kasha. It could be also Ketavreim, but they were allowed to intermarry because they kept records and they told each other, according to you, this is no good. According to us, it's good. One wants to prove this from the next part of the Mishnah that says that also not only the Gabi marriage, also the Gabi Taurus, that even though there's machlokas in between Beishamai and that something is Torah Tameh, they didn't keep away from eating together, and they ate together. They said, so again, the Gemara wants to say the point is, why did they eat together? Because they would tell them, according to you, this is Tameh. The tomatoes the Beisil Beishamai Taros Ninu, El Beishamai Him Beishamai Lama Ninu Taros Beishamai Beisil tomatoes Ninu, and allow the Modilu Shramina. Okay, we'll come back to this again tomorrow. We'll be back in 2 minutes to continue Ilchos Pesach.
What was the last thing?
I'll start again from the bottom of the page. I'll start again. So we'll be back in 2 minutes with Ilchos Pesach.
And were we going to, I thought we were going to alternate between the Haggadah and the Halacha.
If we decide, I'm not